I've been referring to Dragon Age the Veilguard as DEI simulator for quite a while now, and while that is something I genuinely believe, I was also doing that kind of tongue-in-cheek, being hyperbolic on purpose, because while I think it's going to be awful, I still assumed that it was going to be kind of like a classic BioWare game, have the same sort of formula, just a lot worse, given the developers were going to really be cramming their politics down everyone's throats. But some news has just come out suggesting maybe this won't be like a classic BioWare game at all, and maybe DEI Simulator is the perfect name. Because apparently the developers, IGN themselves, they look at Dragon Age as not really the next entry in the Dragon Age series, it's actually The Sims Dragon Age Edition. And basically what's happened is IGN has come out with this article, How Dragon Age the Veilguard Use Lessons from The Sims to Craft Its Character Creator and More. The and more is the scary part here, because what's just become really clear to me is the team currently working on Dragon Age, they see like the things that most of us love in RPGs, like obviously the combat, interesting dungeons, areas to explore, choice and consequence that is actually meaningful to the gameplay, not just aesthetic things like they said the other day that you make a choice and then one of your companions is bruised, looks bruised for a few hours. But I'm talking choices like you side with a faction or a person and that takes you in one gameplay direction, and if you play the game again, you make the other choice, you do something else. I'm talking about that choice and consequence. It's clear that BioWare doesn't really care so much about that. They just care about Sims-related features. Don't worry about all those pesky RPG features, real gameplay. Let's just focus on making sure character creator is diverse and little relationships with all the characters. They're like a community all talking to each other. That's the sort of stuff that they care about. And maybe their little niche cares about that, but we've learned that that's not very many people. That's how you get Concord level sales numbers. So I don't think using The Sims as your biggest inspiration is going to do very well for you. And this article, it's yet another puff piece from IGN. They've got this deal at the moment. IGN have likely paid money to BioWare to exclusively market the game, which means it's in IGN's interest more than normal. I mean, they take ad money from all of the game publishers, so they're never impartial. But this is worse than normal for a few reasons, not just the money being exchanged, but also the fact that Kat Bailey, who is writing this, he's been shilling the game for ages, for like weeks and weeks, a million articles about, oh my god, Corinne Bush at BioWare, the director, she's incredible. She's trans as well, and it's quite obvious what is going on here, is Corinne, Dragon Age director, and Kat Bailey at IGN, their priority is seeing this game become a success, not because it's a great game, but because it's pushing trans rights in the right direction. And they'll call me a bigot and say, oh, you don't believe in trans rights? Just in the context of this video game. Like, I want this video game to be fun for the right reasons, not a propaganda piece. Again, DEI simulator. And the article starts off basically blowing smoke up the director of Dragon Age's ass, so Corinne Bush's ass. Corinne Bush wasn't looking for a job when she sat down for lunch with BioWare's leadership team in 2019. She had been a fan of BioWare games, and she wanted to, in her words, meet my heroes. So I went to lunch with a couple of folks in the leadership team at BioWare. We started riffing about progression systems and skill trees. We really resonated with one another. And much to my surprise, they expressed an interest in me joining. And it was kind of the question you don't have to ask me twice. Dream opportunity, be able to step into the space, visit the studio. I was immediately sold, immediately. And then, almost immediately, she became the director of the new Dragon Age, despite never having worked at BioWare before, never having directed an RPG before. So the very few defenders that there are left for the Veilguard, they're going to be saying, no. There's no way that she was only hired and put into this senior role, the top position, because she ticked the right boxes, because she is a trans woman and this is really, really progressive. They're going to be saying, no, it's because of her vast experience. Her vast experience working on The Sims. No RPGs, just The Sims. And she's going to bring all that experience from The Sims and put it in Dragon Age, because that's what Dragon Age is going to be now. The Sims Dragon Age edition. And that's what they say here. Bush was coming off a stint at Maxis where she helped design the systems on various The Sims projects. In taking the helm of Dragon Age, she became part of a wider talent pipeline flowing from Maxis to other parts of the games industry. So are they also saying that a lot of the people who've worked on The Sims also came across to BioWare? It'd make sense. I mean, it seems like most of the competent people at BioWare, they've long moved on. Like, they went from Mass Effect 3 Dragon Age Inquisition into like 6 years of totally wasted time on Anthem. And we've learned in the industry with games like Redfall, and I actually had to pause this to look the name of that game up because it was so useless I'd already forgotten. But with Redfall, the team behind it, it was basically newbies to the industry because all the good people who worked on Prey, the Arcane games that were actually really good, they left as soon as they saw the writing on the wall that these studios like the Redfall one were moving in the live service direction. So that happened at BioWare with Anthem as well. All the good people that were left were probably long gone, and now you've just got people who've worked on The Sims. They're flowing through. And I don't really have anything against The Sims. Like, it probably is one of the games in the industry where the majority of its audience is actually women, unlike the agenda pushing that goes on, where you get these people on Twitter and so on, stats gurus, experts who try and tell you, no, 50% of the player base of like Dark Souls and Elden Ring is women, and if you say otherwise, you're a sexist. When it's like, no, come on, like most people playing it, it's nerdy, guys, we all know it's true, stop trying to push some sort of agenda. But with The Sims, it probably is mostly women. I don't have a problem with The Sims. I just have a problem with trying to turn what was once a fairly gritty Baldur's Gate-inspired series in Dragon Age into The Sims. Into The Sims DEI edition, because that's clearly what is happening. And if you are bringing people across from The Sims development team, if that's what the Dragon Age team is now, it really explains a lot where we're going, why the priorities that they're taking, which includes obviously the political stuff, the DEI stuff, but it's also in things like most of their focus going into like the character creator instead of the content in the game, like the stuff that's meant to be fun and entertain you for hours and hours. And I get it, a lot of people like expansive character creators with lots and lots of different options. That's fine, and there's obviously many successful games like Baldur's Gate 3 that put a focus on that did really well. The difference with something like Baldur's Gate is that was one of many, many things that Baldur's Gate 3 got right, and they spent a lot of time on, put a lot of love into. With the Veilguard, it feels like they've been totally focused on superficial things, and none of the substance. For instance, you know they've been spending 6 months going, oh, body type A, body type B, we've got to make sure there's no way anyone can distinguish those as being man and women, because sexes aren't real, that would be sexist. In older BioWare games, we had a goal of maybe putting in 20, 30, 40 different dungeons. We don't care about that now. We just care about having that many number of librarian haircuts in the character creator for you to choose from. This is what matters to them now. This is basically the Sims development team, maybe even the Reject Sims development team, like people who still enjoy The Sims, you'll probably still get a good experience, but the people who aren't very good, aren't very talented, they've been shoveled off to BioWare, which is like the weak link of EA now, where all the rejects are, because BioWare are just seen as a joke now, they're not respected. At first blush, it might not seem like The Sims has much in common with an RPG like Dragon Age outside the fact that they both feature romance in some way. Going back to its release in 2000, The Sims has garnered a reputation as a casual, frequently silly life simulator. The game where you remove a ladder from a swimming pool and watch your poor little Sims drown. Under the hood though, The Sims is a complex web of systems, progression and relationships. Sims have jobs, they gain skills, they fall in love. Don't you see, this is what Dragon Age is going to be now. All those great things that you loved about The Sims, so not like real choices and consequences that affect the gameplay. We're talking about like, I think they use this example, does the shopkeeper like you? And it's not about that making a gameplay difference. It's just, does he like you? Is he your friend? What are his thoughts about you when he lays his head on his pillow at night? Oh, it just makes you feel warm and fuzzy. This is what they care about now. And you've got to remember, they have said before, BioWare have said before, that they are taking Telltale games as an influence as well. Now, the choices in Telltale games, they're worthless. You always end up at the same destination. The choices really don't matter. They're basically fluff to make it feel more like a game instead of a walking simulator. And I don't really have a problem with Telltale games either. They're a different genre. They're not trying to be role-playing games. Unlike the Veilguard, which is the 4th entry in a series which has had some good RPGs, especially Origins, and it seems like they're going in a totally different direction now, and they just want to use the Dragon Age name so they can push what they want to, which is really just a lifestyle simulator, or The Sims Dragon Age Edition. And the director of this game says, Maxis is a great place for designers to hone their skills, Bush says. Yes, I'm sure it is, when you want to make games that appeal to fans of The Sims. I don't see how it's super relevant when you're meant to be making a fairly gritty role-playing game in a series that is beloved by CRPG fans, fans of RPGs alike. I don't think it's going to work. It's why the reaction to this game has been, it's a joke. No one asked for this, no one wants this. And it continues here, Bush's systems design background is evident throughout the Veilguard. It includes extensive skill trees with subclasses that are geared around different weapon types and styles of play. Well, we've seen a lot of that, and it's basically just action, Mass Effect styled combat. It doesn't resemble older Dragon Age, and it's fine. Like, Mass Effect combat, it's fine, it's okay, but the truth is most of these choices are not really going to matter in combat. Maybe on harder difficulties, but I've said before that most of their development time isn't going to be about making harder difficulties a positive experience. Barely anyone's going to play on them. Most of their time is going to be spent catering to those normal difficulties, which means choices won't really matter. Any choices that you make are going to be an afterthought on how they actually affect gameplay. The choices you make also resonate deeply throughout the story. It's also possible to level up your relationship, here it is, with individual factions and shopkeepers, which in turn opens up new possibilities for acquiring unique gear, and characters bear long-lasting scars depending on the choices you make. Now, I'll be honest, if this was just like regular RPG and there was no sort of controversy around this game, it didn't look like shit, the things that we've heard about it in general didn't sound appalling, this paragraph would be okay. Like, these are normal things that you would use to describe an RPG. But they've already kind of let the cat out of the bag by saying things like we're influenced by the Walking Dead Telltale game where choices don't really matter. My prediction here is most of these things, like leveling up your relationship with people and factions, it's really just going to be a superficial thing. It's going to be about, like, make your own fun. Like, do they love you? How do they feel about you? None of this is going to actually impact gameplay on a fundamental level. Maybe it's just me. I feel like there's other people out there. We care about the gameplay and how our choices actually change our playthrough. Not just having like a Tumblr entry in the character profile where it's like, this person likes you, this person feels positively, not this person, they feel a bit negatively about you. I think that's what this is going to be. It's all just superficial stuff for the Twitter crowd, the purple hairs, the they, them. This is what the game has been designed for. People who basically go through life LARPing 24/7. See, look at this. What's so wonderful about The Sims is there's so much autonomy in that game, and we find that RPG players are hungry for that same sense of autonomy, making decisions, influencing characters. What is this? Why are you taking influence from The Sims and focusing on that? Like, BioWare have a catalogue of beloved games. You go back to Baldur's Gate 2, Knights of the Old Republic even. I'd even take, like, going back to early Mass Effect and so on. They should be your influence. Dragon Age Origins. Not the friggin' Sims. But they can't do that because none of these people, or very few of them, worked on the classic BioWare games. They're just morons who are making a lifestyle simulator and now they're pretending to make an RPG when it's really something else. And we can all see it. And it continues here, character creators are extremely complex and in many ways even more personal. It's so important that players feel they can be represented and feel pride in that representation as they go through the creation process. What the fuck are you talking about here? Like, we just want to make a cool character and play the game. Representation, blah, blah, blah. No. People just want cool character that looks good. You don't like that because you don't like good-looking characters or even just appealing characters. You've probably engineered the character creator that there's no way you can make a combination that results in a good-looking character. It's got to be ugly, ugly, ugly. That's your ideology. In particular, I remember we were struggling with some of our iconography. And we turned to each other and said, how did The Sims 4 handle this? How did The Sims 4 handle icons in the game? Again, your inspiration, you're certainly looking in the right places. Who could argue with that? And this as well. She adds that Maxis has a tremendous wealth of knowledge when it comes to representing gender, identity, and the surprising number of localization issues that come along with that when you're releasing in different regions and languages. Are you going to do the Spider-Man 2 thing where you like make up words, Latinx or whatever it was because you're so inclusive? It's like, this language for this country is racist. We here in the West have to change it. Is that what you mean by inclusion? Probably. But this whole article, obviously it is embarrassing, but the saddest part is the lack of self-awareness. Like, they actually thought, given it's an IGN puff piece designed to sell the game, they thought this would get people excited. Like, oh, wow, I was on the fence about the Veilguard, but The Sims? Count me in. Incredible. Not once have they talked about being influenced by any decent RPGs. I don't think they've ever mentioned Baldur's Gate 3. Dragon Age wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Baldur's Gate. Like, that's how the series started. Spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate. It sounds like they've taken nothing from that game, at least in terms of RPG experience. Maybe the character creator, but they've gone mask off here. They've basically talked about, we're inspired by The Sims, not RPG character creators. This sums it up perfectly. Just looking at the comments, sometimes I worry that I must be going crazy because none of this appeals to me. But then you read the comments and no one likes this. We can see who's losing their mind. But you've got this comment, which really does sum it up. You guys really don't need to keep convincing us not to buy this. We're already not. As someone else says, that sums up my reaction. Sums up mine as well. It's never a day that goes by without BioWare just looking like an absolute embarrassment compared to their past self. We'll see how this continues. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.